Hi there, guys. It's Joel here, Trading Group 101. So, as promised this morning, we are going to have a chat about what I think could well be a serious weak point in the cryptocurrency world. This is off the back of the major catalyst that we all know about by now, the FTX scandal or crisis, however you want to call it. And this is something else that I think that the market is now starting to realize is that how much exposure did FTX have, or other companies have, sorry, to FTX in particular? And what sorts of problems will FTX closing, bankruptcy claims by its owners, and etc. And now we're obviously getting into some of the details of exactly what's happened within that crisis, where they were using customer deposits, customer money to go trading with, losing that money, and obviously that's where we are today. So what do with FTX being one of the largest, it was the second largest crypto exchange, or maybe the third largest crypto exchange. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. But with it being one of the largest and massive crypto exchange and a major pillar within the cryptocurrency world, what other companies have exposure to that money? Okay, and I think that as we go through this process where we've got investigations at the moment into what's happening, and obviously the winding up of FTX in some way, shape, or form. So we need to now look at what other companies have exposure to that, and as that process works through, what other companies could well be in danger, and what could then obviously be what we'd like to call contagion in the cryptocurrency world. So that means where one cryptocurrency exchange would go down and others would go down off the back of that, or other companies associated to it would have trouble as well because of how closely that they all work together. So my stock, the company that I'm just taking a bit of my focus at the moment is Silvergate Capital. So does anybody know what Silvergate is? And if you're not aware, then we'll just go into that for you now. So Silvergate, they are a cryptocurrency bank. All right, so this is a bank that specializes in cryptocurrency. Much of their business is from large cryptocurrency investors. They actually use Silvergate as a middleman to buy cryptocurrency from the major exchanges. Okay, FTX is one of those. Now they work with most, if not all, of cryptocurrency exchanges, but FTX was one of those. So why do we know that they are linked so closely? Well, looking into it and looking into some news reports and other things that have been coming out more recently, we know that FTX actually held some of their customer money at Silvergate. So some of their deposits were held in what is known as an omnibus account. Okay, so this means that assets that belong to FTX customers were held at Silvergate. Now, we already know that FTX were using 10 billion. I think this, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will in the comments, but if I'm right off the top of my head, the information that we know so far is that as of the 16 billion in accounts and deposits that FTX held of customers' money, 10 billion of that was used to go trading with, so a huge amount, of course. Now, so then we already now know that some customer money was being held at Silvergate. Now, these omnibus accounts, it is actually FTX's responsibility to keep a ledger of whose money's in there, tracking its assets, and also as well, people familiar with this setup, with this relationship of these omnibus accounts, they've said that Silvergate wouldn't actually know or have any visibility into the omnibus account. So they wouldn't know how much money FTX actually has in that account, or whether or not it's relevant to FTX's actual holdings. If they were one-to-one leveraged up with customers' money, so they don't know whether or not they've been using that money in order to go trading with and obviously lose it. So that being said, it does Silvergate in fact come out and actually made a statement to that effect and said that Silvergate actually has told its customers that it cannot take direct requests to withdraw from these accounts because it really doesn't know what's in there, and through the setup of these omnibus accounts at banks, which is a common setup, by the way. It's not the fact that there's anything dodgy in that regard, but it's the fact of that now we have question marks around the risk management of FTX and in particular its owner, Sam Bankman-Freid. So commonly referred to, Sam Bankman-Freid, if you're not already aware, some commonly referred to as SBF. I'll use that just to keep things quite simple. Now, another interesting point that I've found out as well is that Sam Bankman-Freid actually endorsed their risk management department. Okay, so their risk management, Silvergate's risk management department actually made a statement. Can't remember off the top of my head when the date of that, but they made a statement to essentially talk about how great Silvergate were. Okay, and that's actually then been endorsed by Sam Bankman-Freid. Now, we already know about SBF's and Sam Bankman-Freid's risk management credentials, and know they were pretty poor. So that does give me a worry, does give me some concerns about that and whether or not that's anything that customers should be aware of or be worried about. Okay, so that's just a bit of a background information about what role Silvergate has in this cryptocurrency world. So my fears obviously are that the contagion of the FTX scandal, the FTX crisis, is going to spill over into this company. Now, just some information from not me. This is information that I've found. So, it's not just simply me coming up with this at the top of my head, but I just want to kind of give you some of the information that I've got so I can kind of share that and over the last few days kind of put this all together. And comments that other people are making, very established people in this world. So Silvergate is actually the second most heavily shorted regional bank. Okay, so put that into perspective. How many regional banks there are in America? All of the US customers and US subscribers and viewers of this will be aware but regional banks are within the US much more common than they are in the rest of the world. Okay, through states, etc. Okay, so there's a large number of these, and Silvergate are actually the second most heavily shorted regional bank. This puts into perspective exactly what professional investors' view of this stock is at the moment. Now, something else as well that has actually been that kind of caught my interest is that I had a quote come from an analyst. So an analyst at one of these research companies called Michael Perito, he actually said that no bank in the world can honor every deposit held on its balance sheet with cash. So this is what we're now being a little bit worried about, is actually can Silvergate, can they honor their customer deposits? If they cannot, that's a huge issue around their deposits, and obviously more customers losing money that they thought was safe, and it of course isn't. Now, as I say, Michael Perito is actually right in that how many banks operate is the fact that they will have their customer deposits of a certain amount, and then obviously it's called fractional reserve banking. It's not something I'm going to kind of get into right now, but it essentially means that only a fraction of your money that you deposit is actually held there ready for you to withdraw. And the idea is that not everybody withdraws their money all at once. So in that case, that everybody can get their money when they need it, a little bit of it, etc. Right? So that's the concern that many people have. Now, Silvergate, of course, the good thing is with most banks is that they're held through various, regulatory bodies that they have to keep account of this and all the rest of it. Now, in cryptocurrency, things aren't as mature in that respect when it comes to legislation, when it comes to regulations, etc. So our concerns are whether or not actually Silverbank are keeping to those same regulations that we'd expect from professional larger banks, right? Now, so that's that's the summary of my fears. But I mean, I want to go into some of the quotes that I've found around Silvergate in particular and about their deposits. Now, Bank of America, one of the largest US banks, one of the largest global banks, said that after the earnings, they posed the question. So the quote was, "After earnings, we posed the question, is the worst behind them?" Bank of America analyst wrote in downgrading the stock, and I quote, "We were wrong." So that suggests that, as I say, they think that after their recent earnings is the worst behind them. And their answer is no. They were wrong about that. Okay. So going on to Morgan Stanley, another huge investment bank. They've now lowered their 2023 earnings per share estimate for Silvergate. So that's not just simply this year. We're not talking about a short-term problem. We're talking about a long-term problem here, 2023. Okay, going into next year, the earnings per share for Silvergate, and arguing that the digital asset-focused bank faces a wide range of outcomes and risks from the demise of the cryptocurrency FTX. So that's Morgan Stanley saying that they already appreciate that Silvergate have actually got significant risks, and to FTX. So those banks don't say these hedge funds, these analysts don't say these things lightly, and certainly need to be aware of this. Silvergate have actually themselves disclosed last week that its quarter-to-date digital customer deposits have gone down to 9.8 billion. Now, just for reference, at the start of the year, it was around 14 billion in deposits that they had. So that's an important number to remember, 14 billion in deposits at the start. Now, by now, it's already gone down to 9.8 billion. And that was as of the 15th of November, so about 10 days ago. And this, for context, at the end of September the 30th, their deposits amount were 11.9 billion. So they've already lost 2 billion in deposits just over the course of essentially a month and a bit, okay, throughout October. Now, we'll go then on to some more quotes from Morgan Stanley, and I'm going now quoting Manan Gosalia, an equity analyst at Morgan Stanley. They've estimated that the deposits at Silvergate are going to go down to a further 5 billion. Okay, so their deposit rate is going to go down to 5 billion by the end of the year. All right, by the end of this year. So that means that within a year, they will have lost over 60%. So actually, it works out 64% of their deposits from the start of the year, going down from 14 billion all the way down to just 5 billion. Now, this is where the concerns start to kind of get into a region where we actually need to start taking notice of this. Is if they've already lost 64 billion, 64%, sorry, it's not 64 billion. They've already lost 64% of their withdrawals, and that's just withdrawals that people have withdrawn from the bank. How much more have they got held there that they don't have easy access to, at least? Okay. So how far do those deposits go down before the bank need to start selling some of their own assets, etc., to start paying out some of these customers? Okay, how far do they go before they get to a point where customers are struggling to withdraw some of their money? All right, so those are just some of the issues that I found, and from quotes from people much more kind of invested in and have much more information than I would do. People from Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, etc., and research analysts as well, all kind of going into the same issue around where are all of the deposits for Silverbank, how strong are they, and will customers be confident that their money is held there safely? And that's the major question. If it's not, then everybody rushes to withdraw their money very quickly. People then can't get access to that because of banks don't hold all of their money in cash, as I say, have to start selling assets. Things then start to get messy, like we've already seen. So, so that's really where I'm thinking that this could well be another pillar of the cryptocurrency world that could cause some more problems, some more selling. And the thing to remember, this isn't cryptocurrency itself having problems. This is the companies within cryptocurrencies having issues. So that's why I'm always still very bullish on cryptocurrency itself. There's no issue around the technology, around everything else. This is just simply around the cryptocurrency companies that are involved in the industry. Okay, so there are question marks around humans, around what we do as investors, company owners, things like that make mistakes. That's what we've seen with FTX. That's not an issue to say there's any issues with Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, Ethereum, etc. These are still very strong assets in their own right. But what we're seeing in the cryptocurrency world at the moment is selling off of those assets in order to pay the bills for real world, bills to pay. Now, one final thing as well that kind of caught my attention is that yesterday, some information came out that Silverbank have sold 9.3% of their company to an investor. So my question is, why does a company need to sell nearly 10% of its equity? And it's very coincidental that this is at the same time, or at least a week or two, a few weeks after FTX scandals come out, that they're now searching for some of their assets. And in fact, not necessarily selling off their assets, they're selling off their stock. So selling nearly 10% of its equity. So is this a question of, are we now seeing Silvergate actually need to start raising some of their capital? And that capital isn't there in assets, it's actually that they're starting to sell off their stock. So it's just a question. It may not be anything, but it's just something that I notice. And when I notice these things, I want to share that with you. And it's just something that I think to watch. If these things do start coming out, then we know the reasons of why they are. We've made the thoughts process beforehand, can react to it, and kind of keep our thoughts around the cryptocurrency valuations as they fall or rise. So we'll kind of go to that extent. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to get into that. And obviously, kind of, you can already see straight away where this stock is actually at itself at the moment. Share, trading at 29%, $29 a share. From its high here, just towards the end of last year, we are down 87% from its all-time high. So nearly 90% of its value already gone. Lots and lots of companies have their value held in their shares stock. Okay, so if we're already trading at $28 compared to $238, well, there's certainly some investors have got concerns over this stock itself. Now, one thing that's going to be quite interesting, actually, if we can put for that one. So if we get any kind of correlation with Bitcoin itself, and certainly, when we look at the sell-off there, pretty flat compared to what I'm seeing in Bitcoin itself. So if we can make that a different correlation. Let's do it like that. Makes it a little bit easier to see that, like that, just kind of a little bit more context to it instead of actually working out on a percentage basis. All right, so you can actually start to see where Silvergate are actually selling off significant amounts of their stock compared to where Bitcoin has actually held its value to some extent. Obviously, sell off quite a bit already, but certainly not anywhere near what Silvergate are at the moment. So it's just showing there's some serious weakness in this stock at the moment. But as I say, let us know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Share this with anybody else that's involved in the cryptocurrency world so that they're fully aware of what's actually happening. And obviously, let us know. Stay safe out there when you're trading. But all the best. Thanks very much.